Okay, so, like, sometimes don't you just feel like the world is, one giant dumpster fire?
Oh, tell me about it.
Terrorism, political divides,
Mm-hmm.
even just personal stuff can feel like everything's kind of going off the rails. But Pastor Jeremy, he really dives headfirst into all that heavy stuff.
He really does.
He doesn't shy away from the darkness.
No.
But he also says this really interesting thing, this idea that the message is greater than the mess.
Yeah. It's such a powerful statement, isn't it? And he repeats it. He repeats it throughout all these different sermons, almost like a grounding mantra. And even before he unpacks it fully, you kind of get this feeling of hope, like there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. It's like he's tapping into something that we can all relate to. Like we've all had those moments, those days, those weeks where you're just like overwhelmed, right?
Totally.
But then he brings in these incredible stories, these examples from the Bible to kind of illustrate how this whole idea of hope plays out.
Exactly. And I think a great example of that is the story of David. So in 1 Samuel 30, we see him and he is facing utter devastation. Like his city's been burned to the ground, his family's been taken captive. Can you imagine the weight of that loss? The feeling of just like complete and utter ruin.
It's like coming home and finding out that everything you care about has been just ripped away.
It's awful.
Yeah, and it's not just the physical loss either, right?
Yeah.
It's that gut-wrenching feeling of hitting rock bottom. And I think we've all been there in some form or another. Or even just having like a string of bad luck,
Absolutely. It's that moment when you feel completely lost and alone, like there's no coming back from this. But here's where it gets interesting. David, even in the depths of his despair, he chooses to seek guidance. He turns to his faith and receives a powerful message of hope.
Which is,
He's told to pursue, for you shall surely overtake them, and without fail recover all.
wow, talk about a message of hope.
Complete restoration.
Yeah, it's like what Pastor Jeremy's saying is that even when things seem completely hopeless, there's always a chance for things to turn around. But it often takes an active choice, like David did.
Yeah.
To seek out that glimmer of hope, that strength to keep going.
Yeah, and you see that theme of kind of seeking strength in the midst of darkness again with Elijah in 1 Kings 19. He's burnt out, he's exhausted from fighting for what he believes in. He feels completely alone, like he's the only one left standing.
Which, let's be real, that's a feeling a lot of us can relate to these days.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, it's like you're constantly bombarded with like negativity and bad news, and it's easy to feel like you're just shouting into the void. It makes you just want to crawl into a cave like Elijah and just give up.
Yeah, it's a natural human response to feeling overwhelmed and isolated. But then, just like with David, Elijah receives a powerful message. He's reminded that he is not alone, that there are thousands of others who share his faith, his values.
And that's such a crucial point, right?
Oh, yeah.
The importance of finding your people, your tribe, those who understand and support you, especially when you're facing your own like personal mess.
Absolutely.
So we've got David, who reminds us to actively seek hope even in devastation. And we've got Elijah, who highlights the importance of community when we feel alone. But Pastor Jeremy doesn't stop there. He brings in another powerful story. And this one might be the most relatable of all. The prodigal son. I mean, who hasn't made a mistake, like a bad decision that's led them down a less than ideal path?
Oh yeah, it's a classic story, right? The prodigal son in Luke 15, this young guy, he throws it all away, demands his inheritance, takes off, blows all his money. It's the classic, what was I thinking? But what gets me and what Pastor Jeremy really emphasizes is the son's emotional state when he hits rock bottom. Like that deep feeling of longing for home, for belonging. You can practically feel the weight of that regret,
Oh, absolutely. The guy's eating with pigs. It doesn't get much lower than that. But you're right, it's that desperate yearning to come back, to be forgiven, that really makes it resonate. I mean, we've all had those moments where we messed up and just wish we could hit like the undo button.
Yeah, 100%. But here's the beautiful thing about the story, and what Pastor Jeremy really hones in on, it's the father's response. Complete and utter forgiveness. The son comes crawling back, expecting, to be rejected, and instead, open arms.
It's such a powerful image, isn't it?
It really is.
It reminds me that no matter how badly I think I've messed up, how much I might deserve that rejection, there's always a chance for redemption.
Yeah, and that ties back beautifully to what we were talking about with David and Elijah, doesn't it? Each of these stories shows us, in a different way, that there's a way out of the darkness. For David, it was actively seeking guidance, taking action. For Elijah, finding strength in that community. And for the prodigal son, well, it was the courage to ask for that forgiveness and the power of grace.
It's like Pastor Jeremy's taking these ancient stories and making them speak directly to, like, our modern anxieties. He's saying, look, the details might have changed, but the human heart, not so much.
Exactly.
We still crave that connection. We still want to find meaning, purpose.
Yeah.
And yeah, we still mess up sometimes.
Big time. And what I find so fascinating is how he reminds us that the message, that hope, it can show up in so many different ways. He's got this great phrase, your mountain will move. But it's not always about things magically getting easier. It's about finding that strength within to overcome, to persevere.
It's like he's saying, don't just wait around for things to change. You got to change your perspective, change your approach, and you'll find a way to move that mountain.
Yes, and that's so important, especially now when the world can feel so chaotic.
And that, to me, is incredibly hopeful, because it means that even when we're facing our own quote-unquote messes, we still have the power to choose how we respond. We have the power to change the narratives. Like, we have to find that inner strength, that spark, to get through those tough times. And I think Pastor Jeremy really emphasizes, like, how important it is to stay open, to be receptive to those messages of hope, even when they come in unexpected ways.
It's like tuning into a different frequency, blocking out all that noise and negativity that's constantly coming at us, which I don't know about you, but that can be tough, especially these days with like social media and the news cycle and everything.
Oh, it's so easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of it all. Like you said, let the mess drown out those quieter, those like more hopeful messages. But Pastor Jeremy talks about how important stillness is. And it reminds us that, that we're not alone in our struggles.
100%.
And I think that's ultimately what Pastor Jeremy wants us to take away from these stories, from this whole the message is greater than the mess idea. It's about remembering that even when things are tough, even when it feels like there's no way out, there's always hope, always a reason to keep going.
Beautifully said. He really encourages us to be active participants in our own lives, especially when things are tough, to find those sources of strength, of inspiration, to cultivate that sense of hope.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Pastor Jeremy's sermons, what's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from all of this?
I hope they remember that no matter how big the mess may seem, there's always a greater message waiting to be discovered. A message of hope.
I love that. And to our listener, if you're facing your own mess right now, remember, the message is greater than the mess. Hold on to that. Find your strength, find your inspiration, and never ever give up on yourself. And never give up on your ability to find your way through.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. It's been a truly inspiring conversation. Until next time, keep seeking those messages of hope.